to make the correction, and sometimes it can overcorrect and like drive somebody out that didn't necessarily need to be, and they just needed to be small talking to, maybe, they're like, well, what about this, and like, how about this instead of that.
I think that's a problem we have. I've seen it in the reptile community, I've seen it in the tarantula community. But
howdy folks, Brian Cusco here at Redline Report, and today we're going to sit down with Dr. Mo Dalal, who is the creator of Tarantula Cribs, and we're going to hear a little bit about his story and how he got to where he's at with Tarantula Cribs today. That's awesome. So, Dr. Mo?
Doctor, yeah, I did. I went to medical school. I graduated medical school now it's 2013, so it's been a while. Did medical school, that took 4 years. And then after that, have to do additional 3 years of residency. So I did that in family medicine. Out of that residency, then I did ER for a little bit, and then hospital medicine. When COVID hit, about 2019, 2020, we started getting into tarantulas. So I actually let's go back a little bit further. I actually had a tarantula when I was in high school, just in a regular fish tank, and that was cool, but that's all we really had back then. Flash forward to 2020 is when we bought another tarantula, the kids and my wife and I, and we were trying to get a good enclosure, and there was not really anything around, especially with the pandemic. At that point, we made our own enclosure at home, and it turned out that people wanted to buy it. And so we started making more and more, and we scaled the business. And so flash forward to now, present day, we're up to 80 different enclosure styles, and pretty big. So we're still growing and still going.
Just in a few short years.
Yeah, definitely. The hobby itself is picked up a lot after the pandemic. I think in the reptile hobby itself too.
Yeah, there was a hot moment there for sure, where I think a lot of people had their best year ever, especially in like ball python sales. The pandemic was that moment where it's like, I've never had a year this good, and that was across the board in reptiles, I would say. Now with tarantulas, it seems like maybe that happened then, but it didn't really drop off.
No, I don't think it dropped off at all. I mean, so when the pandemic started, I know a lot of the tarantula breeders and things like that exploded. And so with more tarantulas, there was a need for more enclosures. But I think there wasn't really anything good quality enclosures, especially for all the different types of tarantulas. So you need, for a fossorial or a tarantula that burrows, you need a taller enclosure without the vent holes at the bottom. For an arboreal enclosure, you need cross ventilation at the bottom and the top. For a terrestrial enclosure, you need a shorter enclosure so the tarantula can't fall. So each different species has a different type of species has a different enclosure type. And so we really went into that niche and made different enclosures for different tarantulas. And I think that's one of the things that sets us apart. Last year, or the year before, we actually went out and patented one of our enclosure designs. It's called the Tarantula Cribs Switch. And so that we were the first enclosure to have a front opening and a top opening tarantula enclosure with cross ventilation and removable background. And so from there, we've kind of expanded our line. So we were really excited about that. Excited to see what else we can add to the lineup.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing, man. I guess I know it's kind of newer because I hadn't really seen it before, but I didn't know that actually, because sometimes something comes across my feed and I don't know that it's new. It's just that I'm seeing it now.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense. But it seems like they've been really, really growing population. I mean, whoever it was we were talking with over here earlier, they said Tarantula Cribs. I was like, oh yeah, I know Tarantula Cribs. And that's incredible because I don't even keep tarantulas.
That's one of the awesome things about Tinley. If you haven't been to Tinley, definitely come to Tinley. You get to meet everyone in the hobby and the cross hobbies too, the related hobbies, the reptiles, the amphibians, all the different people. Tinley's amazing so far. This is our second one. We're not actually vending this one. We vend the St. Louis show. That's where we're from. But this show's been amazing.
Yeah, this is a really cool show for sure. I've actually kept one tarantula. I had a curly hair that I kept for a little bit as a educational animal. Bring them out to shows and do that stuff. So I'm curious what your opinion is on what the best, like, I don't know if there even is one, but if I wanted to have another tarantula to bring out for the educational events for kids, like, is there a species that is particularly good for that?
Yeah, the genus Grammostola, which is, there's like a Grammostola pulchra, which is a Brazilian black. That's known as like the black lab of tarantulas. That's a great starter tarantula. There's a desert blonde, which is a really docile species. That's another great one. I would go with one of those two.
Okay.
If you're looking for something with a little bit more bright colors than that, a green bottle blue is a really good starter tarantula. They can flick hairs a little bit more, but they're great eaters. They're out in the open. They're great display tarantulas. You should definitely get one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll probably have to get a tarantula crib too.
Yeah. No, we'll send you one. We'll hook it up for sure.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Dude, so you said green bottle blue?
Yeah. Definitely get that one, yeah. That's okay. Richard from the Tarantula Collective. That's his favorite one too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a semi-arboreal setup, so you put substrate in there, but give it a little bit more height. They web up the entire enclosure. They're voracious eaters. They're New World tarantulas, and they're more arid, so you don't need to worry about humidity too much.
Okay. And then how like temperature stuff with?
So people say room temperature. Like, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
But typically 75 degrees would be a good spot. You don't need a heat mat or anything like that.
75 degrees is exactly the temperature that I keep ambient in my snake room.
Yeah, so that's perfect.
Wow, dude, so tarantulas. How tight is the tarantula keeping community?
Yeah. So the tarantula keeping community is not quite as big as the reptile community, obviously, and that because of that, we all kind of know each other. So we have the two big YouTubers, Tarantula Cat and Richard from the Tarantula Collective, and they're the biggest YouTubers in the United States. And we have a lot of different content creators on TikTok and Instagram, and we all kind of know each other, and we all talk to each other, and so it is a close-knit community. But like every community, we all have our drama.
Yeah, that tends to pop up. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's good. It's great having the support from everyone. For us, the community is being extremely supportive, and so we really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I mean, yeah, it makes me sad sometimes. I mean, not that sometimes things aren't warranted, or there's corrections that are needed, but sometimes it seems there's a lot of I'm generalizing here, but in any community, not just animal keeping communities, but when there's a correction that sometimes made, it seems like it gets made a little bigger than it needs to be, with a lot more people piling on than need to be to make the correction. And sometimes it can overcorrect and like drive somebody out that didn't necessarily need to be, and they just needed to be small talking to, maybe they're like, well, what about this, and like, how about this instead of that.
I think that's a problem we have. I've seen it in the reptile community, I've seen it in the tarantula community, but overall I would say 99% of the time it's a positive environment. There's going to be drama sometimes, but
sure. But that number you spat out, 99%, that's pretty big. It's like, I think you could deal with that 1% every now and then.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when even if it is actually a 1% moment, like it can get so nasty and ugly in comparison to when it's not. That you're like, gosh, this is horrible, this sucks, and it's like that. But then you realize that's just hopefully a more rare moment.
Yeah, and we tend to remember the negative moments more than we remember the positive, unfortunately. So that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. What is it that you want? If you haven't gotten already, what do you want out of keeping tarantulas or being part of a invertebrate keeping community? Like, what do you want out of that?
I think the next step for us is to create, and this is a big aspiration, and I don't know that'll happen anytime soon, but one of the next steps would be to create an educational center to bring more awareness and conservation to just not only tarantulas, but invertebrates and reptiles and that kind of thing. I feel we need to, everyone really should, but we need to contribute more to conservation, and we're worried about habitat loss and that kind of thing. So I would love to have some kind of educational center, and we're based out of St. Louis, and so I think that will be our next step, is trying to look into something like that.
Okay. That's awesome, man. Yeah, that would be huge. Yeah, I sometimes daydream about having a spot like that just for public, kind of like any of these places that people have, whether it's a pet store or some kind of public thing. And the cool thing is, it seems like there's a lot more of them popping up, and there's plans for people to put more of them out there, which is great, because that's being put in people's cities, and then they're naturally going to be part of their community in a very physical and permanent, in a building way. And with all this talk of like different legislation, and that stuff is happening in real, and you get this fear of like, what if this thing gets crushed out? The more that you see things like that happening, where the physical buildings are put in place and they become public attractions, like what Brian had done, and how close it was with like all of the community and all the city, like, or what Clint just did opening his spot in Utah.
Yeah, exactly.
The city managers are all out there, and it's a part of the entire community as a whole.
Yeah.
And they're being recognized as like a thing that we love and we're glad is part of our community as an entire city.
Yeah.
I think those are important.
Yeah, I agree. And Brian was an inspiration, and he really pioneered that and set an example. And so I think to be able to follow that and bring that to different cities would be, huge for the hobby.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Man, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes a lot of money too.
Yeah.
You're based out of California, right?
I am.
Yeah. And so you know how it is, as taxes and the real estate market is just nuts. So, but I think all in all, having the big picture of having a higher goal, bigger than just the business, is what the next step needs to be.
Yeah, it's huge, man.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to follow you and follow along with your journey, where can they go and find you?
Check us out on Instagram. Our handle is @Tarantula Cribs. We have tarantulacribs.com. That's where you can find all of our enclosures, all 80 or so enclosures. If you have any questions or concerns, you can hit us up. Hit me up personally. I run the account on Tarantula Cribs, and I'll be there to answer any questions you have.
Awesome, man.
Awesome.
Well, I appreciate you taking a moment to come sit down with us.
Thanks for having us.
Seriously, bro.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice work. Yeah, very. But I could see that, like, where your ability to be a doctor comes in, because it's like, I mean, you're very smart, you're articulate, like well-spoken, and just like, that's cool. I love seeing people like that in the hobby, and getting to meet more and more people like that.
That means a
lot.
It
means a lot for the hobby too, like to have people that represent us well.
Yeah.
It gives me hope.
Doctor and tarantulas are like two vastly different things.
Very different. Yeah.
I've always loved animals. I've always loved science, and that's why I did a biology major. And then I'm Indian, I'm brown, and so our parents want us to be doctors, so became a doctor. But now kind of doing tarantula cribs half the time. So
yeah, it's sweet, man. It's good. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Fantastic. Thanks again, dude.
Yep.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go check out what Dr. Mo is doing. And also make sure to check out Kevin McCurdy.
Dr. Mo. So we're talking about tarantula cribs.
Yeah.
I love tarantula cribs.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're super awesome. They're getting a dwarf caiman from me.
Which camera am I looking at you?
Yeah, we just talked to each other. Yeah.
Got it.
You can, if you really feel like you have something that you want to say to like the people out there watching, and like engage those people with your pupils through the screen.
Yeah.
Look directly into that camera on our right.
Okay,
got it. Look right in that sucker right there, and you will be like, "What's up?" Actually, let's practice it. Hi, how you doing?
All right, got it. All right.
I'd love that if you take moments to address the audience, like, by the way, you. Yeah, not enough people do that. I'd love it if you did.
Yeah. You need to buy some tarantula cribs.
Now we're talking, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Here we go. You're just gonna come sit down, or what?
Who's going?
No, I'm doing his intro and outro right now.
Okay, yeah, I'll be really quiet.
Will you? Are you gonna be in the shot? Howdy, folks. Brian Cusco. Oh my gosh.